Philly special, Super Bowl MVP of 2018, Nick Foles.
Thanks for having me on the Pure Athlete podcast.
As a Super Bowl MVP quarterback, how much did it help you to play other sports?
I actually do have a strong opinion on this one. We specialize too much in sports at a young age.
When did you kind of realize, okay, I think football is really my ticket to pay for college?
It was my junior year in football where, I became the starting quarterback at Westlake. We set a bunch of records that were set by Drew Brees.
Like, what is a couple of the worries for you about youth sports today?
Major League Baseball, you understand it's a business, so the sport's not like it was when you were a kid where it was just fun and pure.
So where were you on the depth chart when you first got to Arizona?
I had a red shirt at one point, so it was either Michigan State or Arizona. Regardless, one of the years was burned.
What's your advice to kids that might not have the starting job right now?
It's hard for coaches to coach them. It's hard for them to deal with the adversity of not starting. They're more fragile than the previous generation.
When you were playing both sports, did you take, blocks of time completely away from the sport of football?
I needed those sports, and they both worked hand in hand to create this constant love for the sports.
Before we get to the podcast, if you have middle school or high school kids that play sports and you don't want to fundraise like me, we got you covered. My buddy Chris Carneal owns Booster. Chris?
We help schools and sports teams raise funds in a super fun and engaging way. In fact, the last 22 years, we've raised $750 million, and we can't wait to help you. Choose booster.com.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I'm Jeff Francoeur along with Britt Lee and Brad Williams. How you guys doing today? Good?
We're doing great, man. A lot of good stuff going on. Football is fun right now, college and pro.
Yep. So that's where I was kind of leading. So today's guest, who I'm going to bring on, is, I know down here in Atlanta, it's tough with Philadelphia sometimes, especially with the Phillies, the way they're taking care of the Braves and the Eagles over the year. But I tell you, one of the great guys to me in football, and what's great about football, a man of faith, something we talk about a lot on here, and now 3 kids of his own, and of course, the Philly special, Super Bowl MVP of 2018, Nick Foles. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks for having me on the Pure Athlete podcast. This is exciting. Looking forward to the conversation.
So did it feel good to beat Atlanta all those years? Let's just get it out of the way.
Yeah, I think we should start with that. Every time we played Atlanta, I was actually just there doing my retirement when they were playing Atlanta, and it's always a sloppy game. I was with Matt Ryan in Indianapolis. We were teammates, and it just seemed like every time we played against Atlanta, just a low-scoring, ugly ball game, came down to the wire, usually Atlanta on offense, when I played, they didn't convert for touchdowns to win the game, so we won those games. Unfortunately, a couple weeks ago, and fortunate for Atlanta, they ended up converting, winning the game. But always really great battles.
Saquon Barkley became my favorite player for dropping that pass on third down. I can promise you that.
Oh, I know that was tough.
You didn't remind Matt Ryan of any of that, did you?
You know what? There might have been some play recommendations going into the Indianapolis Colts where the examples were, when we played the Falcons. So just subtle reminders.
Oh, gosh, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on. And before we kind of get to your youth sports journey, I know you just had a big honor. You went in the Philadelphia Ring of Honor, 3 weeks ago when Atlanta was up there?
Yeah, we just did a nice retirement celebration up there in Philadelphia. It's just a good way to end it. Family, friends, kids, nieces. It was really cool to end it that way. I'm very fortunate to have such a great relationship with the Eagles and the city of Philadelphia. So to finish my career that way on a high note was really special for us. And then honestly, just to have an opportunity to share my thoughts in a press conference. Not every player gets that, and I don't take that for granted. So I was really honored to be able to do that with Philadelphia.
Do you, be honest with us, Nick, when you go to Philadelphia, do we have to pay for many meals? If you're at a restaurant, is somebody gonna foot the bill for you just out of gratitude?
Whenever we go out to eat there, everyone's always really kind, really gracious. I always want to pay my way. I'm grateful for the service and for the food, but there might be a few extra appetizers or desserts that come out. But I always want to take care of the people of Philadelphia and, the restaurants. And so they always take such great care of myself and my family, and we always have a great time.
See, unfortunately for me, when I played for the Phillies in 2015, we lost 99 games, so they actually don't let me in restaurants.
They charge you double.
They charge
doing
me
here?
double for cheesesteak.
Yeah, that's rough. I've had some tough years in Philly as well, so I feel your pain. That's tough.
I tell people all the time, and these guys know it, man. And I've said it. I did the postseason last year, spent the whole time with Philly. Look, they get in stadiums and they're crazy up there. But outside of that, dude, it is a great place, and there are some great people up there, and they're passionate, man. You cannot fault them for that.
Yeah, that's neat. Well, Nick, there's some stuff from those NFL days and those Super Bowl days that we want to talk about that are really cool. But we want to start with taking you kind of all the way back and hearing a little bit about where you grew up and what was that like, and if you could just kind of take us through when you started playing sports and what you played, and we want to ask some questions about your story.
Yeah, that's a great question. Growing up, played all sports. I mean, my parents both worked when I was really young. And then, I have two younger sisters. So once, my mom had my sisters, she was at home with us, but they were both working, but they still gave me an opportunity to play in every single sport, whether it was soccer, football, baseball, taekwondo, golf, tennis, every single thing I did, sports camps during the summer. And I'm super grateful for that. And that was growing up. I mean, elementary school was everything. Middle school was baseball, football, and basketball. And then once I got to high school, it was, basketball and football. And basketball, I love basketball just as much as I love football. And those were a huge part of me growing up. I mean, probably like yourselves, like I was outside throwing the ball every single day. I was throwing a tennis ball against the wall with my baseball glove on, with my baseball hat, and just doing stuff every single day outside. And it was a huge part of, who I was as a kid and who I am as a grown up.
I've read that your parents were in the restaurant business. Is that correct?
Yeah, I grew up in the restaurant business. My dad still does it. He's in Austin, Texas, and he's, crazy story. He didn't, he grew up in Mississippi. His parents were different things happened, but weren't around as much. So he helped raise, his sisters and brother, and didn't finish high school, and just crazy journey. And then, long story short, he eventually started working in restaurants and just really enjoyed it, working every single job. And he just told me that was the one time he wasn't worried about where he needed to be or what time it was. And he's 77 years old, so he's lived quite a life. And he just said he thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, that ended up in him being a great restaurant person, a restaurant creator, and knowing the business inside and out. And just coming from nothing. My mom had a tough childhood story as well, where her mom died when she was 11, and raised by different people, and ended up eventually working at 3M and putting herself through college in 3 years. She went to the University of Texas and put herself through college. So I knew their work ethic from a young age, and it really impacted me. And I never took it for granted that I could play sports. I don't know if that was just God in my heart, just saying like, hey, like this is really special, and not taking it for granted. But I always, every time I stepped on a field, I remembered that my parents gave me an opportunity to be out there where maybe my dad or mom didn't have that same opportunity. So I was always super grateful and, wanted to make the most of it.
I bet are you pretty arrogant about your brisket? I mean, you guys being from Austin, Texas, and your dad being in the restaurant. I mean, is it tough to eat brisket any place else?
With no barbecue joints, but Texas barbecue is really special. And when I live in California, and there is actually a great barbecue spot out here in Southern California called Heritage Barbecue, but they came from Texas. So you know what, like I am particular. I do love my brisket, and I do love my barbecue. So any chance I can have some barbecue, I'm all for it.
So Nick, as you kind of went along playing sports as a kid, were you always one of the top 10% kids out there from a talent standpoint? Did you have a lot of success early on?
I was sharing this story with someone the other day because I'm coaching first grade. Well, it's really first and second grade girls flag football. Our team is predominantly first graders, and the second graders could be in first grade. They're very, very young for their grade. And I was just saying that when I was in that age, when I was in first grade and I started playing flag football, I rode the bench. Like we're trying to get all the girls to play. We're trying to rotate evenly, try to get everyone a handoff, but we're also trying to win games, but we're trying to do it the right way as well. We're trying to, build a foundation of athletics with these girls, let them have fun and inspire them. But I just remembered back in that age, first grade, I felt like I was always good, but first grade, I didn't play as much, and I was awful at soccer. My kids are actually not bad at soccer. Mama's got great genes, so I'm really grateful for that.
Yes.
But I mean, as it pertained to like, as I started getting older, basketball, football always, was really good, and I was a good baseball player, and I was always, I mean, I guess looking back, I was always solid. I think one of the most I was humbled in a moment in middle school. I always felt like I was fast, like, because you're a good athlete, you feel like you're fast. And I remember in middle school, we lined up and it was like the whole PE, we were doing the 100-yard dash. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to burn everybody. Cause like, you're a kid, you're a good athlete, your hand-eye coordination's there. And I remember that I just got burned by this girl by like 20 yards. And now she went on to eventually run track in college. But I was like, dang, like I didn't even finish like in the front of the pack. So that was pretty humbling for me with speed, but always tried to work on it. Just never could do it on a football field. Became a pocket passer, and that worked out all right.
What about your height? So, we've had, speaking of Matt Ryan, he's been on here and he talked about how between freshman and sophomore year, he put on 6 inches in like 8 months. Like, did you always have that size, or did you eventually hit it after puberty?
No, I was always steadily taller than everyone. I was never like the kid. It was never like I peaked and then stopped. It was just steady. I mean, I'd say freshman year of high school, I was 6'4", probably like 190. And then sophomore year was like 6'4" and a half, 220. And then by my senior year, I was 6'5", 235. So I really started lifting weights.
You were a grown man coming out of high school. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I was big, and then you get to the NFL and you get all these coaches that are saying like, hey, because you weigh in every week, and I had coaches like, hey, we need you at 235, and I'm like, dude, I was 235 as a junior in high school, and now I've gone through college, and I'm now in this was like 6th or 7th year in the NFL. I'm like, you really think I can weigh 235 after all that? Like my build is different than some other guys. Like I just have a bigger build. Like, and even to this day, like getting down to that, like that's hard. I mean, your body starts changing, but I was always steadily bigger, and basketball, because of the strength, I play down low, but also play on the wing, and just had so much fun doing it all. But yeah, I mean, my mom's 5'3", so if everyone's like, oh, your mom's like, your genes, my dad's 6'2", 6'3", my mom's 5'3", so I'm very fortunate to be 6'5".
So Nick, we talk a lot on this show about sports specialization at young ages for kids, because that's what's going on big time today in youth sports. Looking back on your journey, what are your thoughts about specialization, and how much did it help you as a Super Bowl MVP quarterback? How much did it help you to play other sports?
Yeah, I actually do have a strong opinion on this one. I think we specialize too much in sports at a young age, in the sense of like one sport. Like we're just playing football, we're just playing basketball. I think kids. I had this conversation with the dad the other day, and actually they introduced me to y'all's podcast, which is ironic because then
I love it.
it was just perfect timing for everything. And I just think kids need to do it all. I mean, the reason I can throw from all the different angles is because of baseball. The reason I can see the field the way I do is because of basketball. So much of my athletic ability was developed playing other sports, karate, taekwondo, the body control, the balance, the flexibility, golf. Golf is just a frustrating sport. So I would say the mental capacity to play
100%.
golf, right? Racket sports, to see a ball flying at you faster and have to control a racket. So I believe that kids, they're kids, like, let them be kids. Let them play. The best thing they can do is be outside in the sunshine, playing a sport, running around. They don't know what they want to do. You didn't know what you wanted to do at that age, so let them do everything. Your kids that you're trying to specialize in flag football, soccer, or whatever, they might want to be an artist or a photographer, or now it's a YouTuber. But you don't know what they want to be, so like let them do it all. My mom had me in art camp every summer, and like all these different things, because she wanted this wide, broad thing. And now I look back too as being a parent, I'm like, I know why she had me in these camps all the time. She wanted me to be away in camps, right? When you're a kid, you think your
Out of
parents
the house.
want you around all the time. And now being a parent, I'm like, during the summer, like, we need camps. We need to get them out so we can get stuff done.
I love it.
What talk about high school then? Like, because when did you went to a pretty successful high school there in Austin? Big public school, I'm sure is what it was, right?
Yeah, Westlake High School.
So did you continue to play multiple sports in high school? And then when did someone, or when did you kind of realize, okay, I think football is really my ticket to pay for college?
Yeah, in high school, I was a basketball football player. I played, early on, everyone thought I was a basketball player because I think I was the second player in school history to play varsity basketball as a freshman. It just wasn't normal. And then, I was on varsity football as a sophomore, which is really the earliest you can play at Westlake, just such a big school, such a powerhouse. So I was really successful my freshman year, my sophomore year in basketball. And then it was my junior year in football where, I became the starting quarterback at Westlake, and we had a really good season, one district in an epic game. And then we lost in the first round of the playoffs, but we set a bunch of records as an offense, as a passer, that were set by Drew Brees, originated by Drew Brees. So like we broke all those records, and I remember sitting there like this is pretty wild that we just did what Drew did, but better. Because I mean, there was a belief at Westlake because of what Drew had done and other guys like it's possible.
Yeah.
So I think at that point, football really took priority. And I had my varsity coach at Westlake for my freshman, sophomore year left the school, and I was really close with him. So that was tough. So going in my junior year of basketball, I was just like, you know what, I'll just play basketball. I love basketball. And, football became my priority after my junior year. And then my senior year, we went to the state championship. We lost in football, and I had to have my whole right shoulder repaired with 9 anchors in it after the football season. So missed my senior year of basketball, which was unfortunate. But I was a two-sport athlete.
Did you when you were playing both sports, when it wasn't football season, were you doing anything to train for football? What did that look like? How did you develop as a quarterback? Or did you take, blocks of time completely away from the sport of football?
You talking about in high school or just like in the NFL?
Yeah, in high school. In high school.
You know what? I needed both sports. By the end of football season, I was like, you're in the playoffs, you're having fun, but like I was ready for basketball. And then by the end of basketball season, because I also played AAU basketball, I was like ready for football. And they both worked hand in hand to create this constant love for the sport. So I always had another sport to play that I loved. And it was always fun transitioning out of basketball season back to football. And I fortunately, because I did that, I missed track season. So I never really had to run track, thank goodness. So I really wanted to go deep in the playoffs in both sports. So I did not have to run track, because we all know how, as much as I love the high school football coaches, they all want you running track, and we'll see why now. But man, when you're slow, you do not want to be on that track. You want to go train for speed, but man, I'm not wanting to run like the 100-meter dash or, the hurdles. Like I'll do some high jump here and there, but
that's why I played baseball, man. You didn't have to worry about track.
That's why those sports became beautiful. But as it became, specialization in the off season, at that age, no, not really. I was always on the field. I did not have a personal quarterback coach. I know those are big now, and I think that's really cool that kids are wanting to get that extra work in to teach them how to be better players, how to read defenses better, better teammates. I did not do that. I was just, playing sports all the time. I mean, I went to college not knowing one defensive coverage. I don't know. And people will think that's crazy because the kids that are coming out of high school right now are so impressive with their knowledge of the game. And I just knew how to play the game with feel. I was audible in routes in high school, audible in plays, and it was all based on the feel I saw from the defense and the holes I saw in the defense. And then as I grew and learned more about the game and more about defense and knowledge, I was so grateful that I got to learn to play with feel first, and then I could play with structure, with understanding, as opposed to you always knew structure, so this play should not work versus coverage, whereas like, I didn't know that. I saw cover two. I'm like, I'll just throw the ball deep over these safeties. I don't care. So what I thought was a flaw at a young age going to college actually became a strength and an asset in the NFL for me.
You know what, dude? You just said one of the greatest things that I love. You learn to play with feel first, and then the other way around. I feel like today it's so backwards and so different. Kids aren't allowed to learn how to fail or learn to play with feel.
Yeah, that's cool.
When we talk about it, we talk about it in baseball all the time, right? Bullpens, guys come out, throw 100 now. They have no idea where it's going. It's nothing but this is what they're taught. And so I appreciate it. So you decided to go to Michigan State. What was the recruiting process like for you?
So after my junior season, I had a really good year, and I was recruited by all these different schools. My first 2 scholarships came in on the first day. My head coach at Westlake, Coach Long, brought me into his office, and he gave me 2 envelopes, and he's like, "Hey, these came in for you." And I looked at him, and it was Duke and Ole Miss, and I was like, "Oh, thanks, Coach." And I threw them away. Because you get all the questionnaires, right? And I was just so tired of filling out questionnaires. He's like, no, Nick, you need to look at those. So I look at him and I sit in his office and I read them, and it's like, you've been, a full scholarship. And I was like, wait, is this what I think it is? So anyway, that was really, really cool moment that I almost ruined, but thank goodness my coach knew what they really were. But after my junior year, I have family in Arizona, and I always went out to Arizona and stayed with my dad's business partner, Guy. And we'd go to spring training baseball. And, I always loved at the time watching the, San Francisco Giants, watching Barry Bonds, that was when everything was crazy. And I just loved Arizona. So I actually committed to Arizona State under Dirk Cutter after my junior year. So my whole senior season, I was committed to Arizona State, and then Dirk Cutter was fired, and I had to have my shoulder repaired after my senior season. So I met Dennis Erickson, who I really liked Dennis as I got to know him when I played at the University of Arizona, but he wasn't the coach that recruited me. They had already signed 2 more quarterbacks. I had just had shoulder surgery. I decommitted late in the process, and then there was really, everyone signed, but Coach D'Antonio at Michigan State started recruiting me himself, and I ended up going there because I just really love Coach D'Antonio, who just was put in the Hall of Fame, I think, for college football or for Michigan State recently, and went there for a year. And I learned a lot about myself that year. A lot of different things happened, but I really gave my life to Christ at Michigan State. I grew up, going to church, doing confirmation, all those different things, but there was different things that happened going into my freshman year at Michigan State that really brought me to my knees and realized I wasn't really letting Christ into my heart, and I wasn't walking alongside him, and I wasn't living my life for him. And that sort of changed everything for me at Michigan State. But ultimately at the end of the year, I realized if I was going to enjoy being a student athlete in college, I needed to enjoy going to class where I lived and maybe have a little bit of sunshine as much as, Michigan State was good for me. So eventually ended up at the University of Arizona. I walked on my first semester. There was no scholarships, and then was rewarded a scholarship in the spring.
Wow, that's awesome. Just curious, we talk about adversity a lot on here and people trying to overcome. So just kind of walk through real quick. You talked about 9 screws in your shoulder?
Yeah, 9 anchors put in my shoulder. I had a 3/4 labrum tear, shredded capsule. I had played with it for 12 games my senior year of football, and
wow.
I remember when it got dislocated. It was against our rival Austin High, and I was scrambling around, and I was getting tackled by basically the whole defense, and I was falling backwards, and I went to throw the ball, and it was behind my head, and the dude ripped my shoulder. Ended up being a touchdown pass, but for 12 games after that, I was in a lot of pain. My shoulder started dropping, and my dad was always like, "Hey, you need to throw more over the top." And I'm like, "Dad, I'm trying. I don't know what's going on." And after every Friday night game, my arm would be dead. I couldn't lift it up. And then my mom had this manual therapist that she had worked on, that I had previously worked on with a bad ankle sprain. So I would go see him, and he would work on me for an hour or so to where I could throw the ball a little bit when I left. And then I would be in pain all the next week, play again. It would sublux in and out every single game. And if I threw the ball past 50 yards, which was often, it felt like it exploded. And then at the end of the season, I played in 1 or 2 basketball games in Washington, D.C. for a tournament. And I did a behind the back pass, and the whole shoulder slipped out. And then I went to the sideline, and the trainer there, they do the test where your hands are upside down, and they pushed down and slipped out again. And the lady's like, I'll never forget this. She was like, "There's nothing in your shoulder holding it together. You need to go, when you go back home, get an MRI and get checked." So went home, got an MRI, and 3/4 labrum tear. Ended up very fortunate to go to Birmingham, Alabama to have Dr. Andrews do my surgery, as you know. And he was specialized in throwing athletes. And, I was very fortunate to have that because Drew Brees had just had his surgery a couple years prior. So I think Drew put in a good word for me. We were able to get in. My dad and I drove all the way to Birmingham from Austin. We had the surgery. We did rehab the next day, and then we drove back and then just went through the process. But you learn a lot through injuries. You learn a lot through those trials, and it was tough, waking up every day, going to rehab. And then I remember starting to throw after like 4 months, and I could throw the ball maybe like 1 foot, and it felt like I was throwing it 70 yards. And I remember just starting to cry. But then I never took it for granted that once my shoulder was healed, I was always super grateful to be able to throw the ball. And it taught me a lot about life. And honestly, that was part of when I went to Michigan State, where I gave my life to Christ. That was one of the trials that was going on in my life, was still continuing to rehab from my shoulder injury.
And then you go to Arizona, and you said you started as a walk-on there. So where were you on the depth chart when you first got to Arizona?
At that time, you're sitting out.
Yeah, you had to sit out.
You're not even on.
Yeah, you're not even. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got to Arizona, and I have to sit out a season, or I guess we used it as a red shirt. I mean, I had a red shirt at one point, so it was either Michigan State or Arizona. Regardless, one of the years was burned. And I just did the scout team and just went to school, and that was really it. I just worked hard, and I just remember, I didn't find this out till later, but I was running the scout team, and we had one of the most heralded, if not the most heralded, quarterback recruit in school history there at the same time. And he actually started ahead of me in my redshirt sophomore year. And, he ended up playing once I left and did a great job his senior year. But eventually I won the job after I played against Iowa and marched this 80 yards. And started from the redshirt sophomore year on, all the way to my senior year. But yeah, I mean, it was, I was at the bottom of the totem pole, not even a thought in mind, and just had to endure that year, and then fought for the starting job, and eventually got it like third or fourth game of the season, my redshirt sophomore year.
So Nick, I want to ask you, you just said your freshman year at Michigan State, you gave your life to Christ. You ended up moving and going to Arizona. You're at the bottom of the totem pole, you just said. Did you, two-part question. Number one, did you ever think about quitting? And number two, what did that change in life? How did your faith inform the rest of your sports career?
That's a great question. There was times at Michigan State that were really tough. I mean, I was not in a great spot. Even when I gave my life to Christ at Michigan State, like, it was still a battle. I think that's what people need to realize too, is life is a battlefield at times, all the time, really. I mean, you're going to have good days, bad days, everything in between. What it is like you have the Holy Spirit within you to walk alongside you, and the Word of God to help shape you. And then the church to help you grow and have community. There was a time in Michigan State where it was just a spring ball practice, and I was just miserable. And my dad was out there for this couple practices going into the spring game, and I was just not enjoying the moment. And I was so close to walking off the field and giving up. And I remember I started to walk off the field. I was just over, like, tears in my eyes. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I remember looking at my dad, and my dad was on the sideline watching, and he knew what was going on in my heart. And I remember looking at him, and I'd stopped. I realized, like I shared with y'all previously, like, the journey I had been on with my parents, my dad being there to help shape me, help grow me in sports and as a man. I stopped, turned around, and finished practice, and finished my time at Michigan State. And that was really the closest it came to stopping. And then I knew right then and there it had nothing to do with football at Michigan State. It had to do with just at 18 years old, you have a mass change of scenery. You're in Michigan. It's very different. We're seeing snow really for the first time. You're going through this. You're not seeing the sun for like 6 months. It was just a very different climate, to where it was just such a shock to my system, amongst other things. There was a lot more going on than that. And that really stuck with me. I mean, that moment is very vivid in my heart and in my soul. And then going to Arizona, I was re-energized. I was excited. I was excited to play football. And then, God, every step of the way, placed people or a community in my life. When I got to Arizona, it was Coach Ed, our strength coach. He had Bible studies every Thursday at his house. So that helped me grow as a human being, because he was really my first example of someone who was a Christian, but like was probably the toughest dude I'd ever seen. And like, he would smack talk, but he would never cross the line where he wasn't living for Christ. But I was like, man, this is like very different than I'm used to. Like, he's pushing it and doing all this stuff and smack talking, but like, he's not he's doing it in a way that's very unique because he's living for the Lord each and every day. And then he's teaching us the Bible Thursday nights and we can have fellowship. But that to be said, like in college, like I was still battling that 1 foot in Christian faith and 1 foot out in college life where, there was like good weeks and there was weeks where like, it's college. There's different things going on. And eventually things had to happen in my life where like you realize like there's things that we're doing as college students or college athletes that like doesn't align with me living for Christ. But God put people in my life all throughout the journey to help me grow in my faith. And that was a huge part of Arizona was like having Coach Ed, having the guys at Bible study, having my teammates to talk about the word with. Like that was huge for me.
Man,
awesome.
Nick, what's your advice to kids so you obviously finish at Arizona, you get drafted by the Eagles, and kind of same thing there. You come into a backup role, right? And I would say, what's your advice to kids that, might not have the starting job right now or might not be where they want to be? But one thing I always said that I've read that I think is so cool is you see so much in youth sports today, and I see it all the time because I'm in it a lot more than these guys are now, but pulling against a guy or girl that might be in front of you, right? Like, man, I hope she or he doesn't play great. I'm going to get my opportunity. And what do you say to kids? Because you did it the right way. And when you finally did get your opportunity, man, you were ready and took full advantage. But I always say you can sleep at night knowing like I did it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it in the sense of like it's really a heart issue, right? Whenever I talk to kids or talk to players, and they're in that role, because it's like really frustrating. It becomes hard. I feel like this generation, just talking to coaches, the next generation, it's like hard for coaches to coach them. It's hard for them to deal with like the adversity of like not starting. Like they're more fragile than the previous generations, and I think a lot of that too is we're posting on social media to get these likes, and then when things don't go our way, it's tough. And like we don't need to be upset with the generation. We got to figure out how to help the younger kids. Like I have young kids, and I want to help them. I want to help them grow. So what I always tell people is like, hey, when you go to practice, like, and you're not the starter, like cheer on the starter, cheer on the guys or the girls that are like beside you, but also like focus on getting better every day. Like so when kids are like going through drills, like the second they go through a drill, they stop looking around and they're like looking everywhere and they're not paying attention. I'm like, watch the other people do the drills. When you're watching a quarterback do his drop, or when you're not doing your drop and another quarterback's doing his drop, watch the drop. Watch the footwork, watch the throwing motion. You're always gathering information to grow as a player. And then somewhere in your heart, find it genuine to like cheer them on. They make a good throw, like great job. Because then you're going to enjoy what you're doing. You're not going to be stressed every day. Like, oh, I mean, we've all been there in our hearts. Like where you're like, oh man, the person throws a picture. Like, okay, good. And then you're like, oh, I don't want that feeling. Like I can't sit there and say like, I felt that in my life. Just like I'd be lying if I haven't, but like that's something I always tried to fight against. When the person in front of me wasn't succeeding, having that feeling, that's a fleshly feeling. That's not a feeling from the Holy Spirit. So I would always fight that just like everyone else does. I didn't want to relinquish control to like just let that go because I genuinely wanted that person to succeed. And then I knew that if I was taking care of my business and I was working to be the best player, if that opportunity came and I was prepared, I most likely have a chance to succeed because I wasn't living each day like I hope this person fails. I was living each day like I just want to be the best player I can be and I want to learn from this person. And then I want to take care of my business. And then ultimately all the team sports I played were team sports. Like I didn't play golf. I didn't do like singles tennis. So it was always about the team, which I'm really grateful for now that I'm gone, like in the community, because now it's community and teaching kids how to be a teammate. And then those teams that you're cheering on your teammates or people get injured and other people have to play, when it's a healthy environment, those are usually the most successful teams. So I would say for kids out there playing, like go cheer on your teammates. If someone's starting in front of you, don't be upset. Just go back to work. Like if you're at home, like and you want to become a better basketball player, go shoot hoops. Go outside and shoot. If you want to be a better baseball player and you have no one to throw with, go grab a tennis ball and launch it against a concrete wall all day. I mean, if you have a baseball and you really want to, break down that wall and your parents are mad, you do you. But tennis ball comes off the wall a lot faster than a baseball sometimes because of, the material. But there's always things to get better. So if you're a kid out there, cheer on your teammates and then just focus on getting better every day. And when your opportunity arises, make the most of it.
That's such a great point, because so many kids at our school that they start doing the math and they see, well, this kid's ahead of me and this younger kid's probably going to pass me too, and they do less work and they give up, as opposed to, like you say, you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know. And it's so crazy because and a lot of kids who do quit or give up then get regretted because they see, well, that guy changed sports, or that girl, got injured, and I would have had my opportunity to play. And you're right, the way you glorify God is putting 100% in, and then letting him take care of the story.
Yep.
And trusting in him that he's faithful. And that's just a great point.
So staying with that for a moment, Nick, so take us to that season. Carson Wentz gets hurt. You come in, the latter stages of the season, take the team through the playoffs to the Super Bowl, win MVP. Yes, you had physically had to do the things to be ready to do that, but mentally, so many, I mean, even in the pros, we see so many backup quarterbacks come in and they kind of cave in the pressure, and you just rose to the occasion. What enabled you to do that? What do you think was the factor there that helped you do that?
That was a crazy year. When I had re-signed I was with Kansas City the year before, and then when I had re-signed in Philly, I had to really think through it because Philadelphia had traded me to St. Louis several years before, but it was a different regime. And Tori, my wife, and I had just had our first child, Lily. And so it was either there or we were going to go to Tampa Bay. And Tampa was offering a significant amount more money than the Eagles were, even though both were like great deals. But like there's more money, and then Florida, no state income tax. So you're like, you just had a kid, what are you gonna do? But we sort of weighed down. We prayed about it. We slowed down, and then we're like, you know what? Like, we're a family. There's a young quarterback in Philadelphia, named Carson Wentz. I would go back him up and help him grow into playing in Philadelphia, because I had already started in Philadelphia for several years, in 13 and 14, to where like I knew what the city, how playing the city was. I knew the great part about it and then the tough part about it. So like I could help them with that aspect. And then I'm also like still a good player. So it helps the team. So we made the decision to go back to Philadelphia, one, because we loved the community, and two, because a lot of my teammates were there that were there before, and we knew what type of locker room it was, and we knew it'd be really great for our baby girl and our community as, being parents now. So I think going into that year, my heart was right in the sense of I was not going in there to take Carson's job. I was not, some people might think like, oh, he's getting in here just to get in. I was literally in my opening press conference, I am here to help a young quarterback grow and be a great teammate to my teammates. Like, that was as simple as it was. And that's what it was. Every single day, running scout team, helping a young player, getting home at night to my daughter, spending time with Lily, and then putting her to bed and spending that time with my wife, Tori. And so going through the year, I actually had like a torn common flexor tendon in my right throwing elbow. So like I missed a lot of training camps. So like I was always like reminded every single day of the pain in my elbow. And like every day I needed God to get through the day just to throw the football. And it was so painful that season. And, that's never talked about because everyone is like, oh, Super Bowl. I'm wearing a sleeve on my shoulder to keep everything tight just to be able to throw the football that season. But then when Carson went down, your first instance, I think the first thing that comes over is fear. You don't want to show it, but you're like, wow, like Carson's out, like something's really wrong. Cause being around him, extremely tough, great quarterback. I need to go in there and execute and do this for my teammates. So like the quick first instance fear, and then and that's like quick. And then you have to counteract that. Like, okay, get that out of my head. Like it's time to just go play and trust your teammates and go play ball. So I remember running on the field against the Rams and just realizing, like, I just got to execute these plays and execute it for my teammates. And we were able to finish out that game and win the game against the Rams. And then we went to New York and we beat the Giants, and then we beat the Raiders. And then I played like a quarter against the Cowboys before the playoffs. But it was really just, I changed roles. I became the starting quarterback, but we had a great rhythm and a great routine for the week. And then it just became, I was in the huddle. I was the one like talking to the guys, and I was able to do that organically without like, I knew I didn't have this ill will towards the situation or like wanting that to happen to Carson. I genuinely felt and hurt for Carson that he was out. and I cared for Carson and we prayed for Carson. But I also knew my responsibility was go be the best teammate I could be and play ball. So I think having that gave me a lot of clarity to just go out there and let it rip. And I had great teammates and coaches. So I was very fortunate to be in a great situation at the right time.
Finishing up about 5 minutes or so, Nick, we appreciate you giving us time. But, you know, now that you have 3 kids, and something we talk a lot about when we do our 3-man episodes and digging into stuff, like what is a couple of the worries for you about youth sports today? I know you're just getting in with your daughter, but your son's about to get going too. What are some concerns you have?
You know what? I mean, it's probably the same as when we were kids, and it's just more known now, and there's so many different resources. I'm so happy, but I love y'all's resource. I think this is awesome. Um, I'm not really concerned, more so like in the sense of I know so much of what will happen with our kids will happen within our household with Tori and I, and just like teaching them the lessons and going to practice, and I'm gonna try to coach as many of the sports as I can, just to be there. Like today's flag football practicing is first second grade girls flag football, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun teaching the girls the foundation of the sport, but also teaching them competitiveness, being great teammates and being great competitors to the other team. So sportsmanship. I'm not. So that's my influence on my kids. I'd say the biggest thing I see, and it's the same thing when I was a kid, is like parents really early thinking that their kid is going to, putting them in one sport and they're playing one sport year round. You know what? Like there's going to come a point, most likely, it doesn't always happen, but like they might not like that sport, and it might happen in high school. And all those years were in that one sport. And as we talked before, all the different sports you play, maybe your kid's not good at the other sports. Like I wasn't great at soccer at all, but it was a great foundational sport. And in my opinion, it's one of the best foundational sports you can play for any sport is soccer. So our kids play soccer. They're going to play everything. We're trying to get our son into jujitsu he needs discipline, and I discipline him every day. It's still not working, but I'm going to keep disciplining him, out of love, of course. But I'm not worried. I mean, in the community out here, I mean, the parents are awesome. They love the sports, all the little things. I mean, it's the same as it always been. Maybe putting your kid classifying too early, but I mean, that's just life. I mean, you're going to do your best. I mean, every parent I want to believe is trying to do the best thing for their kids, and that's okay. The way we're going to do it, and I know like my brother-in-laws who are ex-athletes as well, is like we want our kids playing all the different sports. Even if they're not good at it, they still can play it, because like when your kid's not good at it, you can teach them more, as opposed to like when your kid's really good at it, they could regress as they go because they feel like they're always the best. So like we're always trying to teach our kids to be better. But I think sports are a great resource in life, in the sense of like they're not going to win every game. Like our girls flag football team, after every game was like, did we win? Because they don't know the score. And we'll tell them like, no, like last week we won 19-18. And it was against the mainly second grade team. So it was like a really awesome win for our girls. But then we like shake hands and we cheer on the other team, and then we pray after the game. And then the games we've lost, it's like, hey, but y'all gave it everything you had. You did so good, and I can't wait to see you on Wednesday at practice, because I bring like a little turtle box thing. I play like kids bop music. We like make it like really fun for them, and we structure it out.
Have you ran the Philly special yet with them?
Not yet. I mean, context is everything. First and second grade girls flag football. So we did throw a pass for a conversion, but we're just trying. When I say you're playing quarterback, everyone's like, "What is that?" We're just trying to get to the point where I say the position, and you're the one controlling everything. We're getting there. They're progressing every week, and honestly, it's so much fun for me with the sport. Like leaving the NFL, it's a business. I mean, you obviously Major League Baseball, you understand it's a business. So the sport's not like it was when you were a kid, where it was just fun and pure. So now to get back to where it's fun and pure has been so much good for my heart, and I really enjoy just watching the kids play. I love the joy of sports with kids. So I think as a parent, just don't mess it up. Like make sure they have joy, make sure they have work hard, and make sure they give it everything they have, and that's all you can ever ask.
Man, I love that. I mean, you just talked about the purity, and that's why we named, our brand Pure Athlete, because there's so much pure in youth sports, and we just don't want to see that go away. Yeah. And so parents, and Nick, you're just starting it. enjoy the heck out of it. It's so much fun, and it's tough at times, but it's so much fun, and it's so rich in opportunity to teach your kids.
No doubt. Amen to that.
Well, man, we appreciate you spending time with us today. Good luck at practice, the games. Keep going. I got my 5-year-old daughter, so I pitched to her softball team. It's the same kind of thing, man. You're just hoping they run the right way after they hit it off, man.
Oh yeah, when we hand off a ball and they start running backwards, you're just like, oh no. But it's a lot of fun, and they make it a lot of fun. I mean, I haven't coached my boys yet, but I'm sure I'll probably enjoy it. I mean, it's hard. The girls are just so much fun, so I don't know how I can.
Well, I was going to say, if you don't think the girls listen, wait till you coach the boys. I coached my 8-year-old flag football team last year. They don't listen to a word you say.
Oh, I know. It's wild, but it's I guess it's like
fun.
it's like golf and everything. I mean, these kids teach you patience. We're always learning. I'm learning so much from the kids. I'm trying to pour into the kids, but they're teaching me a lot more of my issues than I'm teaching them. But yeah, thank y'all so much.
Thanks
It's awesome.
so much, man. Best of luck,
Thank you,
and
Thank you,
we
Nick.
appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.